Well, man, you know what I want to do tonight? You know, there's so many different things going on. I feel like we've covered so much offshore stuff lately. I kind of wanted to open up to you guys and see if y'all had any topics y'all wanted me to dig into tonight. Do y'all have? I really like to do what y'all want to hear more than anything else. So, is there anything y'all want to talk about? I mean, general fishing conditions, whatever it is, technique specific. Anybody think of anything offhand? I couldn't. Basically, what happens is I couldn't think of anything, so I'm gonna make y'all think of something.
What about big flutter spoons?
Big flutter spoons, like just in depth on how we fish them.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Something back home that your guys, we're from Missouri, that
gotcha.
You guys loosely do.
Right.
But, you know, you read about it being bigger things, you know, more south.
Yeah, I mean, you're at the home of it right here. This is where it started.
This is the home of it.
This is where the technique was actually invented. In fact, the man that invented it, you can buy his spoons right in that store right there. It's called the Big Joe Flutter Spoon. He's actually a very good friend of mine. His name's Joe Spates. He's retired. He shut his shop down, but he used to have a shop right down the road here. So it's, you know, flutter spooning is near and dear to everybody at Lake Fork's heart. We love flutter spooning out here. And man, it catches some big fish. I mean, it catches some really, really big fish. And, you know, I think that there's really a little bit of a misconception on the correct way to fish a flutter spoon by the powers that be in fishing, right? Like the tour level guys. Who am I to tell them they're wrong, but I think they're wrong. I do, and I'm gonna tell you the reason why. The reason why is because I used to think about it the same way all the tour level guys now do, or the majority. I don't know every one of them and their thoughts, but what I see those guys do is what I used to do. A flutter spoon is a very big, very heavy, very awkward bait. Well, anytime you get a big, heavy bait with a giant treble hook on it, you tend to put it on a big, pretty heavy rod. Maybe not an extra heavy 8-foot whatever, maybe not a Swimbait rod, but you're going to put it on a pretty heavy rod. Something like a deep cranking rod or something, you know.
I use this rod for it.
Right there. And that's an 8-foot heavy with a moderate tip. So it's got a little bit of tip to it, but it's really
it's a
big stout rod. It's a big stout rod.
It's a huge rod.
And I used to do it that way too, and I fished it on 20-pound fluorocarbon. And man, those fish would bite, and I'd pull into them, and I'd fight them. They'd come up jumping, and that spoon would come out. Because they've got multiple ounces of metal directly attached to the hook, which gives them leverage to throw that bait. Flutter spoons are notorious for being the worst bait to land fish on. You get big bites, but man, you lose a lot of them. So, fortunately for me, I'm really good friends with the guy that invented the technique. And I told him about my flutter spoon struggles on landing fish. And he said it's because you're fishing it like you fish everything else. You're setting the hook real hard, you're bringing them to the top, and you're trying to boat flip them. You can't do that with a flutter spoon. They're going to come off. They got too much leverage with all that weight in their mouth. And I said, well, how do you fish it? He's like, well, I fish it on a 7, I don't remember what.
Like a 7
I think his was medium. A 7-foot, but he was like, it's a medium. It's like, it's a medium action rod, and I throw it on 15-pound or 12-pound line. I'm like, what? What? Like, you want me to throw a bait that big on 12-pound line on a medium rod and then have all that weight of that bait and a 9-pounder on there, right?
Yeah.
And deal with that on Lake Fork? Well, the truth of the matter is you're not throwing a lot of flutter spoons in heavy cover. When we're throwing a flutter spoon, we're on a road bed, we're on a bald point, we're on a, you know, bridge piling, you know, different things like that where you just don't have a lot of heavy, dense cover that the fish can't run you up and wrap you up in a tree. So you don't need to manhandle the fish. In these areas we're fishing flutter spoons. They have water to run. And I actually got a one-off rod from 6 Cents that was a prototype back in the day, and it's the only one I got, but it's perfect for a flutter spoon in my opinion. And it is a 7-foot 10-inch medium. It's a really whippy rod, and I throw it on
like it's soft. Y'all have no clue how soft this pole is.
Yes, it's the longest, softest. It almost feels like a crappie rod. Like, not quite, but it almost does.
That's basically what it is.
And yeah, when if I hold that spoon out, that rod's like sagging, you know?
Literally, the thing does this. The rod.
Oh yeah.
The one he's throwing is only maybe like a 1-ounce spoon.
No, it's about 2 ounces. It's the biggest one of Joe's. It's not like the big nickels.
Like 10 ounces.
He throws that big nickel spoon. It's not like the big nickels or even the big 6 Cent spoon. It's the 7-inch Big Joe flutter spoon, the Jumbo Joe.
But it's still easily the best spoon ever made.
It gets more bites than any other flutter spoon. It gets more bites than any other flutter spoon on the market. But there's a lot of science behind that, that's a whole other deal we can go into. But the deal is you just deal with it on casting. Here's the deal. It's a 2 ounce bait. You can cast it. You just can't flip it around like it's a spinner bait anymore. Like when you got it on that 8 foot heavy, you can just flip that sucker out. You can't do that. It's like throwing a big swing. You got to let it load up a little bit, you know, like let it hang there and kind of lob it out there. Don't be in a hurry to cast it. It's not a big deal. You can still cast it plenty far, okay? Not that you really want a flutter spoon way away from you. You don't. You don't want to cast flutter spoons real far. It's going to kind of monkey up the angle of the dangle on the action. And on top of that, you don't want to hook a fish on a flutter spoon from here to the tree over there. Like that's,
No.
it's a nightmare, man. It's a nightmare. It's already hard enough to land them on it as it is. So you just lob it out there and it goes down and the action's still the same. I mean, yeah, there's more drag and bend on the rod when you pull it up, yes, but it's not, it doesn't make that big of a difference. It doesn't make you work that much harder. A flutter spoon is not a hard work fishing bait anyway. You're not doing this, you're not grinding. So it's no big deal. Here's where all the advantage comes in. And it takes a little bit of discipline and time to learn this. Is when you get that bite, you just start reeling and then pull. And that bend of that rod on that medium action loads that whole rod up. And I want you to go ahead right at first and pull real hard. Just don't jerk. Don't jerk, but pull. And once you get it pulled hard, stop reeling. And just keep that rod bent. And do not pull. Don't even pull on that fish. Once you've got it dug in good, like start feeding it back to him a little bit and just keep your rod tip bent. But really consciously focus on not pulling that fish. Bass jump in deep water. Bass jump because we pull them. If you set the hook on a bass in deep water and you don't pull, he doesn't come up. Most of the time. Some will. Most of the time he doesn't come up. He does this and he does this, he does. And we're on wide open spaces with a spoon, so he can do that. So get it dug in, then don't pull, and just let him swim. And let him swim and be it takes some time to learn how patient you gotta be. Because I can tell you what's gonna happen. Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna go, okay, Billy said, don't set the hook, pull into it, got it. Okay, I'm gonna do that. And you're gonna set the hook and the fish is gonna come screaming on the top, right? Okay, this time we're not gonna set the hook. So this time we reel into it, we pull, and then we just keep pulling. And we keep reeling, we keep pulling, the fish is gonna come to the top. Like you're gonna have to go through this process of learning exactly how extreme we're talking about not pulling on this fish. You don't want your rod tip to straighten out. You don't want your line to go slack. You want it to be tight, you wanna have a little bend in that rod. With a medium action rod, it don't take much to keep it bent at all. So the big deal is just really being disciplined to not pull that fish to the top and let him swim forever. Don't get impatient. The other thing that's gonna happen to you in this process of learning how to do it right is you're gonna do everything right. You're gonna get it dug in, then not pull. You're gonna take your time. That fish is gonna be swimming. And the first time he stops swimming hard, you're gonna start reeling him up. Don't do that.
No.
When he stops pumping his tail, just let him keep going. He's not done. Like slowly reel him up. And the minute he starts pumping his tail and digging again, let him go. Maybe even thumb the spool, peel some drag, thump, whatever you gotta do, feed the rod to him. Let him stay down. You want to encourage him to stay down without your rod getting straightened out. Does that make sense? Yeah. And if you'll do that and take your time, and sometimes these fights can take quite a while doing it like this, but if you'll do that and take your time, when that fish comes to the top, it will come up and just go and lay there. And you just slide the net under and reach in there and grab them. They don't even flop. They don't even flop. And I promise you, other than the rare exception when you have a fish that just screams to the top without you even pulling on it, which will happen, but it's very rare. Other than that, you will land every single fish you hook on a flutter spoon. Every one of them. If you use that rod and reel setup. I did not believe it. Joe told me that, and I was like, this old dude is getting dementia. Like, he's got that old timers or whatever it's called. And I thought it was crazy of him to tell me to throw a bait that big for big bass on a medium action rod. I cannot tell you the difference it has made for me in my landing ratio. I just do not lose very many flutter spoon fish anymore. I don't. So
Yeah, me and you fish that like totally different.
I know. You know, I'm gonna tell you.
Totally different.
And I've told this story before, but man, I like Chris Zaldane. You know, he's not originally from Texas. He's a West Coast guy, which, you know, dog, that's hard to forgive, but we'll try. But Zaldane's kind of a Texas guy now. He's an adopted Texas guy, and he's
like it or not, he's a hammer.
Oh yeah, he's an excellent fisherman. He's way better than I'll ever be, like light years. He's always out here. He works with Santone Lures, which is a local company here in East Texas. Man, I like Chris Zaldane. I pull for Chris Zaldane when I see him fishing tournament. The Gunnersville tournament last year, he had a school of fish start firing on that flutter spoon and had multiple. I'm talking about.
They were all like 9 pounds.
3 or 4 or 5 opportunities to catch one of these fish, and he wins the tournament. And they're all coming off. and I'm pulling my hair out because he's throwing it on a flipping stick. You know, he's throwing it on
His rod
some
was like way
7, 8,
overkill.
8 foot flipping
7,
stick.
8, super freaking extra heavy.
And he's throwing it on that. I'm like, oh God. And who am I to tell Chris Zaldane how to do anything in bass fishing? But I'm like, bro, you kill it. You got it wrong. You got it wrong. And if I know, from what I've seen in my experience, I feel really, really, really confident. I shouldn't say I know. I feel really confident that if Chris Zaldane would have been using a medium action rod, he would have ran away with that Guntersville tournament. He had landed 2 or 3 of those bass, and he wouldn't have got all the bites he got because they were getting off a lot quicker than it would have taken him to land it on a medium action. But he would have won that tournament. It hurt my heart for him because I liked the guy. I wanted to see him win. And dude, that sucks as a fisherman to work your butt off. You know, all week long, practice, man, on the road, living out the truck, whatever, fishing all 3 days, execute, fight, scrape, get there, last day, opportunity, last hour of the tournament. I got my big fish school. They're here. This is what I've worked for all week, all year. This is the one opportunity. I might only get one all year, maybe one for multiple years, to win a tournament and win it in fine fashion, and then to have it just come off, and then another one come off, and then another one, and another one. It was just heart-wrenching to watch him go through that, and I was like, oh God, just change your rod. You know, that's all it was, man. But he's Chris Zaldane, so he's probably right and I'm probably wrong. There's also that.
There's also that. Me that me and you fish it like totally different. I mean,
well, I'm the only one besides the guy that invented it that I know that fishes it like that.
For it, but this reel is a 7.5. I throw in 8-to-1 lose Super Duty. This rod's big, but look at all that tip in it.
That's a cranking rod. That's a graphite cranking rod's what that is. Deep cranking rod. Yeah.
But what I do with mine, and this is what that I've learned with me that works, is this is gonna get on his last nerve, is I set the hook up and I crank them to the top and I just crank the whole time. I just crank them in the whole time.
And every time he loses half a second of control of that fish, he loses the fish.
Now,
like if that fish gets enough momentum to actually get airborne,
your arm will burn
if he gets
because like you're sitting there with that reel and you're doing this with it, like as fast as you can.
Answer me this though. I know that you're trying to take control of that fish, fill his mouth full of water, drag him along the surface.
Yeah.
I get what you're doing.
Yeah.
I do that on crankbaits, and you're not supposed to do that. I get it.
Yeah. I'm the same
but
with that crankbait though.
It does happen even when you're trying to do that, that fish will get enough slack or enough momentum to get airborne, or he'll get his head back down and start running. In those situations, you lose a lot of those fish on a spoon.
I'll be honest, and this isn't something that I'm just saying just because they're here and because that's turned on. I don't hardly lose any doing that.
Me?
I may have lost, I land 9 out of 10 on it.
We're going to have to bring GoPro and get evidence of this. I done seen a bunch of fish.
That's just something that I started doing last year because like you said, you see guys, they're doing this with that spoon and they get bit and they start doing this. They come up and jump and then that's a lot of weight on that one hook that they can sit there and do that with.
Yeah, it is, man. And you know,
so that's something that I just started doing because I learned if I just cranked it and got them in the boat like right now, then they was good. And then when I met you and you told me about this whole medium action rod,
do it the other way.
Yeah.
It's not my idea.
Honestly makes sense though.
Don't blame me. Talk to the guy that invented the technique. I just copied him.
That's true.
And tried to argue with him that was wrong, by the way, which was maybe my dumbest moment.
You really like to use a bigger rod most of the time.
I do.
Let's talk. You crank with a 7/8 heavy and an 8-to-1.
Yeah, I do. You throw a flutter spoon on it.
That's a spoon. It's not a crankbait. That's a whole nother.
This is probably my favorite part about bass fishing. Is no, in all seriousness, this probably is my favorite part about bass fishing. I say this probably every time we do these, but you see how different you can do things.
Yeah.
And he's got all the confidence in the world in that setup, and I've got all the to me, he's doing it way wrong, and to him, I'm doing it way wrong. And you know what? There's one way to settle it.
Let's get in the boat and do it.
Let's go see. You know what I mean?
This is what I always tell people.
And it's not that either one of you is wrong because, dude, if you believe in it, and also when you're talking about rod setups and fighting fish, I'm sitting here telling you the way that it's worked for me, and he's telling you the way it's worked for him.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it might not be something different for you because when you're talking about fighting a fish and setting a hook and keeping a fish pinned up, the biggest factor is something that you're comfortable with, that you have confidence in, and that you know how to handle, right? You have to know how to handle. I promise you, I didn't pick up that medium action on that flutter spoon and go out there the first week and land them all. Like, I wouldn't get a good hook set on them. Them suckers would come up and jump because I was pulling, and the flutter spoon it wouldn't just come off. Like the flutter spoon would go phew, like flying out because I wasn't getting the hook in them at all. And so it's really about doing something that you have confidence in, that you can control that fish and have control of the situation. Sometimes that's a disciplined approach by having a bendier rod and pulling less on the fish and lighter line. And sometimes, okay, that's set the hook, get the rod down, fill their mouth full of water, and boat flip them when they get there.
Yep.
Which is how I do most of the stuff that I fish. So.
Find what fits you. Find what you like. Because I had a guy the other day. He was using that daggum spoon. He didn't like the. I could notice when he would go like to rip it, he was just like. So we changed him out to a 7.5
medium heavy or
medium
something?
heavy.
Yeah.
That rod is the one that he liked.
Works
better.
more comfortable for him.
Ever since we did that, he could.
That's important.
Find what's comfortable.
That's important.
To you.
Yeah,
Find what's comfortable.
Confidence and being able to have control over the fish is
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, that's so important. We can't state that enough. Any other questions? You want to know why that one spoon's better than the others?
Sure.
Okay. So the deal is, and I was told not to say this for years, but now he doesn't care because he's retired. The deal is Joe had that spoon for years and worked on it. And the old original prototype is like way lighter and falls way slower. And he goes, that one catches fish better than everything else. The one that's real light and falls real slow.
Yeah.
He goes, but bass fishermen aren't patient enough to fish with it. I couldn't sell it. So I had to make one that was heavier. But anyway, Joe, the design he ended up settling on was made of brass. Okay, that's the biggest difference. It's made of brass. It has a different rate of fall. It has a different kick, a different flutter.
Yeah.
All the other spoons you see on the market are made of steel because it's cheaper and the bait companies can make more money. Joe didn't care. He was one off. He didn't really need. He wasn't trying to make a ton of money off of it. He wasn't worried about that. He wanted to make the best fishing lure to catch the most fish, and he wasn't even caring about selling it when he made it like that. He was just making it for himself to use more than anything. And then it evolved into this whole deal, and the secret got out. You know, it was actually over there at Joe's shop, and locals a couple locals had it here and there, but it wasn't really a known entity. And Kelly Jordan was good buddies with Joe, and Kelly Jordan used to run around out here. And they used to have a TV show called Ultimate Match Fishing, where you'd have two pros in a boat, and one guy'd have control for an hour and a half, then the other guy'd have control, and you couldn't cross the line. Kind of a weird show, but it was cool. And they did a deal on Kentucky Lake, and Kelly like smokes everybody on these ledges on Kentucky Lake. I'm talking about like in his hour and a half, he was beating what everybody else was catching for the whole day.
Yeah.
You know, like he just crushed them. And he was the only one in the field that had this flutter spoon. And that was all filmed on camera. And Joe, I wish Joe was here to tell a story because he's got some great stories. He goes, I'm sitting there in my shop, and I talked with Kelly on the phone. He said he did good in that tournament or whatever. He did good on my spoon. And he said the next morning I get a phone call, and I said, hello. He said, is this Joe Spates? He goes, yes, sir, it is. He goes, well, you may not know who I am, but my name's Larry Nixon. The younger guys, see, they don't know who Larry Nixon is. They're not laughing. Larry Nixon is a Hall of Famer. He's like Kevin Van Dam from like 1970, okay? And so he goes, you may not know who I am, but I'm Larry Nixon.
These guys go, yeah, all these guys like, no.
Yeah. All the dudes with gray hair were like, Larry Nixon, yeah. But anyway, Larry Nixon calls him acting all humble and is like, yeah, I'm going to need about 100 of those spoons, right? And then he gets a call from like Zell Rowland, and he gets a call from like all these legends of the sport start calling Joe's shop that day and ordering just more spoons than he could possibly make. And that was the introduction to the world for the flutter spoon. That's how it got out, how it happened. That's how it was invented and everything. The cool part about it was he was out fishing with a buddy one day, and just one of them big old, you know, we got these gizzard shad that's like they're like 15, 16, 17 inches long.
And yes, they go thonk.
They go thonk. Well, Joe was out there fishing off of Cheney Point, and one of these shad goes, just did a little thonk thing, just a little porpoise out of the water. And Joe saw the whole shad and saw how big it was and everything. And behind this shad, Joe estimated it was like 16, 17 pounds. It was back in the early 90s. It was one of these huge fish. And it porpoised after that shad, and he saw it. And Joe goes, I need to make a bait that looks like that shad looks, fluttering through that water like that. He didn't say fluttering at that time, but you know, the way that shad looked. And he got to talking with that buddy he was fishing with. He's like, man, what would look like that? And he goes, well, you know, a spoon would, but back then their spoons were like this. You know, that was it. So Joe was an engineer. That was his background. And he got to tinkering around and many prototypes and a lot of things later. You know, here we go with the Flutter spoon. And so it all started from a bass chasing a 16-inch gizzard shad on Cheney Point, right down there by the dam. So pretty cool. Yep, pretty cool deal. All right, any other questions? Anything else we want to talk about?
You gave me those hollow bodies.
That doesn't sound like me.
You gave me
Giving anybody anything.
Because I told you that, you know, on this one point back in Berkeley.
That's right. That's right.
Couldn't get a meeting.
Yeah.
I've never been a believer in those things, you know, because I had always had the Berkeley.
That's right. But it's different.
I got news for you.
It's
There's
different.
a huge difference. I put Berkeley on one rod.
Yeah.
That on one
Oh,
rod,
yeah.
And I threw one cast with one and one cast with other. It was 7-1.
7-1. So that Smash Tech Hollow Belly, we've talked about how special that bait is many times on here, and it is. It's built different. It has a denser plastic in the head, which makes the bait way more durable, right? Like, you know, from fishing the Berkeley. So what he's saying, he was fishing the Berkeley hollow bellies, and you know, hollow belly's a hollow belly. They all look exactly the same pretty much, and they do. But there's a denser plastic made in that Smash Tech hollow belly that makes it a lot more durable, holds up to a ton more fish. But really what it really does that's special is it adds ever so slight amount of weight to the head, which creates an entire body trimmer. The whole body really wiggles faster than any swim bait you'll ever throw. It's almost like, it's as close to a chatterbait as you can get without being a chatterbait, but this one's weedless and you can throw it in the junk. Like, you can throw it in matted grass and do this and it'll come through it. Like, it's crazy how weedless it is. And it just comes out and wiggles like crazy. And it does. I've always preached this, and now you've confirmed it. So he took a Berkeley hollow belly, a Smash Tech hollow belly. He made one cast one cast with the other. And it was 7-1. Smash Tech wins. So that Smash Tech hollow belly, which is available right inside that store, also available for you online guys at tacklewarehouse.com or smashtechbaits.com, which is linked in the description. I was fortunate enough to be at the beginning of that bait, like when that one started. In fact, it's my fault that it's even for sale. That was actually the owner of Smash Tech had that sitting in his shop, and that was like his little, if I want to go out here and catch a bunch of fish, I'm gonna go throw this little hollow belly. Well, I walked in his shop one day, I'm like, what's that guy? Who's that guy? He's like, oh, nothing, don't worry about that. I'm like, no. Who is that guy right there? I was like, dude, I need a hollow belly, man. Hollow bellies tear up, they suck. Give me some free hollow bellies. Quit being stingy, you know? And so he did. He gives me a couple, and I went, bro, I was filming when I use this, and you're going to need to make a lot more because you're fixing to have to sell them.
Yeah.
And because the first time I took it out, I just whacked them on it on camera, and I was like, you're going to need to go ahead and pile up on these and sell them because everybody's going to want them. And sure enough, that's how the hollow belly got started. I've got two baits from Smash Tech that are my fault that they got brought to public. One is the Big Perm, the Magnum Crawler, and the hollow belly. And then Heath one-upped it and made me a big hollow belly.
That's my favorite one.
And I took that one in big swim bait season when everybody's going around these points throwing these big line throughs. I'd take that big hollow belly, and it's weedless, and it has a different action that these fish don't see from any other swim bait. And I'll throw it on them points and catch them big ones, but I can also take it and throw it back there where they're spawning in the junk because it's weedless. And I've caught, I can't tell you, I mean, that first year I had that, I told Heath, I said, man, if you make me a big one, I think I'll really do good on it. And he made me a big one. And that spring, I thought I'd do well on it. And I had I think it was about 3 weeks in a row there, I had one pocket. Now keep in mind, we're talking about a big swim bait, so we're not talking about going out and catching a bunch of fish on it. But I had one small pocket that if I went in there and started that morning in the middle, in the pinch point, in the mouth of that pocket, I could guarantee you we're gonna get 2 bites. Sometimes we're gonna get 3 or 4, but I can guarantee you we're gonna get 2 bites if we start with this big hollow belly. And it's not gonna be under 7 pounds.
Yeah.
Like every bite's gonna be 7 pounds or bigger. We had one fish under 7 pounds in that 3 weeks, and it was 5.5. We also had probably the most famous fish catch that we've ever documented was the 13-year-old boy caught the 12-pound fish. That was on that big hollow belly. Yeah. We're actually going to tell a really cool story coming up in a video pretty soon. I'm going to do a video. So that was 2 years ago in April when that young boy, that 13-year-old, caught that 12-pounder with me. Well, him and his dad fished with me this year. And of course, we went back to the pocket that he caught the 12-pounder in, just out of nostalgia. Like,
Yeah.
I really hadn't been catching them in there this year, but we went back out of there, you know, because when something like that happens, you got to go back there. And so they're with me, and we go back there. Well, his dad caught a new PB in that same pocket that his son caught a PB, and his dad's was 9.5 pounds. Was almost
That's
10.
cool.
Was almost 10. And so yeah,
I knew
they.
you was in that. You told me you wasn't in that pocket.
I gotta keep you from hole buzzing me, dog. Use a hole buzzer.
Lie to me. I literally seen the background. I texted you. Was you in that pocket? You was like, no. You said the other side of the lake.
The fact that you remembered that I told you I was in a different pocket just proves that you're a hole buzzer.
Not a whole bunch. I just really remember when you're being rude.
You're saying?
Which is an everyday deal. You came up on me today.
I
I'm a
did.
whole buzzer.
I hole jumped you bad today.
You said, you went, nah, I'm just looking. Idle this way on the bridge.
Spotlight.
Idle back. He literally idles over it once, spins around, walks up on the front deck, hits a button and goes. I'm like, I don't even care. You
Yeah.
fish it.
Oh yeah, I hole jumped him real bad today.
Me and you do that all the time, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we fish side by side. It's fun. I like fishing
fun,
side by
yeah.
side. It's fun when you know the guy and like it's kind of a running joke. You know what I mean?
Hitting at a fish for him sometimes too, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't net fish in my boat.
You asked for it. Let's talk about the one. Let's talk about the most
We
recent
already
one.
talked about that one.
We gonna talk about that one. All right.
We don't do that one. Any more questions?
Who makes that big pond, whatever you call it?
Big perm.
Big perm.
Big pond?
It's actually, that's our nickname for it. It's actually called the Magnum Crawler. Smash Tech Custom Makes make it, and they sell some right in that store right there. If you go straight to the back wall in that store, you'll find some.
You got some. That's the shaky head, right?
That big shaky head. I like that shaky head from 6 cents because it's got like a 7/0 hook in it, which I like on them big plastics and big fish out here. But yeah, any like big, you want a big heavy, like 5/8 ounce, 3/4 ounce. You want a really heavy shaky head
Yeah.
because you want that thing to kind of glue to the bottom and make that worm stand up. So you really want a heavy shaky head when you're fishing that bait.
You got some.
Apparently you got some.
I got them now, but you had them.
See, 'cause what that worm will do.
Well, you won't find those hollow bodies. Those hollow bodies are right there.
Are they out of stock?
That's
They can't get them in stock. You gotta get them at Tackle Warehouse. The only place I can find telling you.
Yeah.
Who makes that worm?
They're the highest one.
Smash Tech.
$4 more from
This
everybody else.
right here,
They're worth-
Smash Tech Custom Baits.
Say, Pete, remember that big plum? That's it, same thing.
All right.
How did he get the nickname Big Perm?
That was me.
'Cause he
So,
never told me how.
does anybody know? Okay, does anybody get the reference Big Perm? I know some of our older guys aren't going to. So, in the '90s, there was a movie called Friday, and it was funny. I mean, it's the funniest comedy movie. It's really funny. But there was a character in the movie that was a drug dealer that had a
This went south. And
he had a perm. He drove an ice cream truck in the neighborhood selling ice cream to kids and drugs to adults. I don't know, but he had a perm, and his actual name was Big Worm. But this one character in the movie, every time he walked up to him, he'd be like, "What's up, Big Worm? I mean Big Perm." Or no, he'd say, "What's up, Big Perm? I mean Big Worm." And so when Heath Taylor, the guy that owns Smash Tech, when he came out with this worm, I was like, "Man, that's a big worm. That's a big worm. I mean, big perm right there." And that was literally the day that we were going to film, and we were like doing the launch of that bait. And then we joked around, jokingly saying that at the beginning of the video. Well, lo and behold, we went out that day and caught 100 pounds of fish in 5 hours on big perm.
Yeah.
And it kind of became, it just stuck. Like it just became a nickname that stuck. So
everybody knows it now as Big Perm.
Yeah, yeah.
What Heath needs to do is he just needs to take the name off and
I
name
tried to
it
tell
Big
him.
Perm.
I tried to tell him.
Change the name to Big Perm.
I tried to tell him that the day we filmed that episode. I go, you know, you got to change his name. He's like, nah. He's a good old boy.
Go out here to buy it.
I had a guy do that the other day.
They don't know what Big Perm is.
They went in there on a
It's the Magnum
Thursday.
Crawler.
They went in there. He literally calls me. They're in the tackle shop. He's like, there is none of the. I'm like, dude, they're on the back shelf. All I see is a Smash Tech Magnum Crawler. I said, that's it. He went, it's not Big Perm. I said, we call it Big Perm, but it's actually the Smash Tech Magnum Crawler.
Yeah, maybe we need to clarify that a little better.
Yeah, costing them business.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Anybody else got any questions? No?
I got a question about seasonal. You know, sometimes they talk about the upper lake and the mid lake and
Yeah.
down by the dam. This time of year, are they everywhere? Or
I'm fishing the whole
right
lake.
now, where would be the best place to go tomorrow?
It's the worst time of year for you to ask that. Literally,
Because
right now is
they're
the
everywhere.
worst time of year for you. So when you get in, well, we're getting out of that time of year where they're everywhere. But when you get into May and you've still got fish spawning and you've already got fish deep, and then you got fish in between. Like, they're everywhere. They're deep, they're shallow, they're in between, they're on the north end, they're on the south. Like, the whole lake is in play in May. Now we're the first few days of June, but remember, we're delayed this year. So it might be, what's today, June 5th? Today's June 5th. But by the fish's calendar and the water temperature, it's really like May 20th or May 18th or something like that, because of the water temps. So we're still in that zone where they're everywhere. I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, I'm fishing water every day. I fish water this deep, and I fish water 30 foot deep every day right now. So it's a terrible time of year to ask that. Now, what I will tell you is, as we get on into the summer, July, August, late June, July, August, what you'll find, especially the later in summer we get, the hotter it gets, hotter the water temp gets, less oxygen gets in the water, you'll have two groups of fish. The fish will gather in two types of areas. One will be offshore structure. One will be humps, pond dams, points, stuff like that, creek bends, offshore structure. The other fish will be way back in the creek, like separated. All the in-between goes away. But you still have shallow fish and deep fish, but all the in-between goes away when you get into those dog days. And the further into them you get, the more that's the truth. Absolutely. But I've caught a lot. I mean, everybody that's watched my channel the last few years has seen it. It'll be July, and I'll be out there, as far back in the creek as you can get, and catching really good fish. Yeah.
The Division of Wildlife is doing their
that study.
transmitter
Yep.
in the belly.
Yep.
They were caught one the other last night. They've already caught 3 of them. They said, but they want you to put them back because they're obviously 16 or above.
Right.
Yeah.
But they want you to take a picture or get the number and report it.
Yeah, I'm wondering what data they're looking to record. Have you ever read the book Tracking?
You talked some of this on your live stream last night.
And so
What they're looking to record, so what's going on, for the viewers that maybe not heard that, so Texas Parks and Wildlife came out here and tagged a certain number of fish, and they embedded these trackers in them. And they've got little pink tags sticking up. So you come to Lake Fork and you catch a fish with a pink tag, take a picture of the number, remember the number, report that to Texas Parks and Wildlife. What they are doing is they're studying the travel habits of these fish. And they're not tracking trophies, these aren't giants.
yeah, these got an antenna sticking out of them.
Yeah, and these fish aren't like 10 pounders.
No,
They're like 3 pounders.
They're two.
Yeah. But what they're wanting to see is they're wanting to track the travel habits of the fish, and they're wanting to see where they go when big tournaments come to town, when boating pressure increases, when fishing pressure increases, when it decreases. They're wanting to study their travel behavior, where they are in the lake under different conditions throughout the year. Seasonal transitions, how far do these fish travel, where do they go in the lake during certain times of year. So it's really just about studying Lake Fork travel habits of the fish is what it's about. Because this is such a unique deal here with how small this lake is for the reputation it has. We've said this a lot, but every other lake that has a reputation like Lake Fork is way bigger, like 3-4 times bigger than Lake Fork at minimum. A lot of them are much bigger than that. Toledo Bend's 180,000 acres. Lake Fork's 27. There's 6 Lake Forks, like 6.5 Lake Forks in Toledo Bend. Like, that's insane. So Lake Fork is so unique with the amount of pressure per acre, the amount of fishing pressure and the quality of fishing pressure it gets is very, very, very unique. And they're wanting to study the habits.
They said some of these fish they caught have already been 2 miles from where they were caught.
What?
And some of them won't move at all. Let me tell you, this ain't the first time travel habits have been done.
2 miles from where they caught them.
Let me.
That's crazy.
I'm gonna go ahead and make a prediction on what this study is gonna show, because this ain't the first fish travel study that's been done.
No,
it's not.
For like 2 years.
So
They do it through all the seasons.
here's what the study's gonna show. Some fish run all over the lake, sometimes for no reason at all, and some fish won't move no matter what happens.
Yeah.
That's what the study's gonna show, folks.
Bodies are trapped.
And we already know that.
That's what every bass travel study has ever showed always. There was a fish, speaking of Toledo Bend, there was a fish at Toledo Bend a few years ago. They had that program where if you took a 10 pounder and you got a free replica. If you got it weighed and reported it, you get a free replica out of it. What was that program called, JC? You're from down there.
Share lunker.
It wasn't Share Lunker.
Yeah, it was share lunker.
Was it?
They were doing replicas off of it.
Well, no, but Sherlunker is just the state of Texas. This was a Toledo Bend specific deal, I thought.
Sherlunker
I
did
didn't know
it.
there was
They
specific
did it
ones.
too.
Well, Sherlunker gives you a free replica for 13s, but Toledo Bend had some.
Toss up to that.
Toledo Bend had some organization. They give you a free mount on a 10 pounder if you brought it in and weighed it, and then they let it go. But they let it go at fin and feather. Well, there was a fish that was caught 3 times north of the Pendleton Bridge, and weighed in at fin and feather, and caught 3 times in the same spot, Jack. Like out of the dang near same bush, flooded bush. Like an 11 pounder got caught 3 times in like within a month. Like
It got
this
back
fish,
there that quick.
we're talking about how far is that? 20 miles? 30 miles?
It's a long way.
This is 20 or 30 miles this fish would just run in a week and then get caught again on the same deal. Some of these fish, it's like a dog. You know what I mean? Like your dog gets out, he may wander off, but he's coming back home.
Yeah.
Like that's some of these fish, they have a home and they're the dominant fish in that spot and that's their spot and they're not moving, they're not leaving. And some of these fish will go miles in a day. And that's what every fish movement study on bass has ever showed. And my suggestion is, other than maybe a little bit of tournament pressure makes them suspend or something like that they throw in there to make it seem like a worthwhile study, it's going to say the same thing. Fish have a pea-sized brain and they're really, really stupid and they do things for no reason. That's what the study's going to say. Y'all ever eat a metal hot dog before? You ever eat a plastic hamburger? These idiots do it every day or we wouldn't all be sitting here, you know what I'm saying? So. All right, we've been going a pretty long time. We're going to let y'all get out of here now. Hey, man, thank y'all so much for joining us. Thank Lake Fork Marina for hosting. Thank each of you for watching. We'll see y'all right back here in 2 weeks.